Dr. Holland told her to roll up her sleeve, not because he cared about protocol, but because he wanted to see if the scars would match what he suspected. The scrub room at Walter Reed Veterans Hospital smelled like iodine and suspicion. Dr. Maya Reeves stood at the surgical sink beside Chief of Surgery, Dr. Richard Holland, a man who'd spent 32 years perfecting the art of reading people through their hands. She was 27 according to her residency file, but her fingers moved like they'd seen 1,000 procedures, not the 68 she'd officially logged. "Your sleeve, Doctor." "Reeves," Holland repeated, his voice flat. Maya paused, water still running over her forearms. She met his eyes in the mirror above the sink. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then she rolled up her left sleeve. The scars ran from wrist to mid-forearm. Pale, surgical, precise. The kind that came from something sharp moving fast under pressure. "Kitchen accident during med school," Maya said, her voice steady. "Broken glass." Holland studied the scars through the reflection. Glass doesn't cut in parallel lines. It does when you're trying to stop the bleeding on someone else. Behind them, the OR door opened. Dr. Marcus Chen, a third-year resident with a military family background, stepped in. He glanced between them, sensing the tension. "We're scheduled for a routine cholecystectomy in 6 minutes, Chen said carefully. Holland turned to Maya. "You're taking the lead, Doctor." Reeves consider it a competency evaluation. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to Emergency Heroes Stories and tell me in the comments. Where are you listening from? The patient was a 52-year-old veteran named Edward Callahan, retired Navy, inflamed gallbladder, textbook case, expected duration, 90 minutes. Maya positioned herself at the table. Her eyes scanned the instrument tray once, just once, cataloging everything. "Scalpel," she said. The scrub nurse placed it in her hand. The first incision was perfect, precise depth, exact location, minimal bleeding. Holland watched from across the table, his eyes narrowing. He'd performed this procedure 600 times. He knew every step, every hesitation point, every place where residents second-guessed themselves. Maya did none of that. She moved through the laparoscopic approach with mechanical efficiency. Her commands were quiet, anticipatory. She asked for instruments before the nurse could predict them. "Retractor," Maya said. "Suction, left quadrant." "There's going to be more fluid than the imaging showed." Chen applied suction fluid cleared, exactly as she'd predicted. Holland checked the surgical clock. 18 minutes in. They were already approaching what should be the halfway point. "Dr. Reeves, you're moving too fast," Holland said. "Vitals are stable. Bleeding is minimal. I'm being efficient, not reckless." Chen exchanged a glance with the anesthesiologist. Everything Maya did was technically flawless, but the speed was unsettling. At the 32-minute mark, Maya paused. Her head tilted slightly, like she was listening to something no one else could hear. "Dr. Holland," she said quietly, "do you see the discoloration around the fundus?" Holland leaned closer to the monitor. "That's within normal inflammatory range." "It's not inflammation, it's early peritonitis. The tissue pattern suggests microperforation." Holland's jaw tightened. "You're a first-year resident, Dr. Reeves. You don't diagnose complications based on pattern recognition." "With respect, sir, I just did. Stay focused on the cholecystectomy." Maya's hand stilled for exactly 2 seconds. When she moved again, her technique hadn't changed, but something in the room had shifted. She completed the procedure in 39 minutes total. The gallbladder was removed cleanly. The incisions closed with interrupted sutures. Precise, evenly spaced, faster than anyone in that room had ever seen. Chen noticed the suture style immediately. He'd grown up on Fort Bragg. His father had trained combat medics. He knew what military field sutures looked like. Those were military sutures. 2 hours later, the lab results arrived. Chen found Holland in his office, holding the printout. "Elevated white count," Chen said. "Sepsis panel shows early infection. CT scan confirmed microperforation of the bowel. Undiagnosed Crohn's disease." Holland read the report twice. "She knew," Chen continued. "Before any of this came back, she knew. Lucky guess. That wasn't luck, sir. That was experience. Nobody moves like that without extensive field time." Holland set the papers down. Find out everything you can about Dr. Maya Reeves' education, references, work history. I want to know where she really trained. In the residence locker room, 3 surgical residents whispered over coffee. 39 minutes for a cholecystectomy, one said. That's impossible for a first year. She diagnosed Crohn's by looking at tissue discoloration, another added. And those sutures, the third said. My brother's a Marine. He showed me photos from field hospitals in Afghanistan. Those are combat sutures. Down the hall, Maya sat alone in the residence lounge, reviewing tomorrow's case files. Her encrypted phone buzzed once. She glanced at the screen. The message was brief. Monitoring situation. Maintain cover. She deleted it and returned to her charts. But her hands, those steady, scarred hands, trembled for just a moment, because Maya Reeves knew something no one else in that hospital did. Eventually, everyone's past catches up, and hers was already at the door. The call came through at 6:47 a.m., 3 days after the cholecystectomy. All available surgical staff to Trauma Bay immediately. The overhead speaker announced, mass casualty event. Bridge collapse on Highway 495-38. Casualties inbound. ETA 4 minutes. Maya was halfway through morning rounds when the alert sounded. She dropped her chart and moved toward the stairwell. Dr. Reeves. Holland's voice stopped her cold. He stood at the end of the hallway, arms crossed. You're restricted to observation only, Trauma Bay 6. Do not touch a patient without my direct authorization. Maya's jaw tightened. Sir, with respect, this is a mass casualty situation, which is exactly why I need surgeons I can trust, not residents who operate like they're hiding something observation only, Dr. Reeves. That's an order. The emergency department transformed into controlled chaos within 6 minutes. Trauma bays filled with crushed limbs, lacerations, penetrating injuries. The bridge had collapsed during morning rush hour. Steel cables snapped. Concrete sections dropped. 40 feet onto traffic below. Maya stood in Trauma Bay 6, hands behind her back, watching senior resident Dr. Ava Patel worked 3 beds over, managing a 60-year-old woman with a fractured pelvis. Dr. Chen coordinated triage in Bay 2. Every attending surgeon was occupied. At 7:03 a.m., paramedics wheeled in a man on a stretcher. Male, late 30s, crushed beneath steering column for 22 minutes. The lead paramedic reported BP 90/60, heart rate 118, presenting with abdominal rigidity and left flank pain. Maya's eyes locked on the patient. His face was pale, jaw clenched against pain. But it was his eyes, gray-blue, sharp even through the morphine haze, that made her breath catch. She knew those eyes. Trauma Bay 6, the paramedic called. That's you, Dr. Patel? Patel glanced over from her current patient. Transfer him to Reeves, I'm tied up here. The stretcher rolled into Maya's bay. Name? Maya asked, reading the chart. Sergeant Cole Brennan, the man said through gritted teeth. Retired Army Ranger. Maya's pen paused for half a second. Where were you stationed? She asked, keeping her voice neutral. Afghanistan, mostly Kandahar, 2017 to 2019. Maya placed her stethoscope on his abdomen. His breathing was shallow. Rapid abdominal sounds were diminished on the left side. Brennan's eyes tracked her face. I know you, he said suddenly. I don't think so. No, I do your face. I've seen it before. Somewhere in theater. Maya pressed gently on his left flank. He flinched hard. Focus on your breathing, Sergeant, she said. But Brennan's mind was working through the morphine fog. Kandahar 2018 Forward Operating Base. Lindsay. My squad leader got hit by an IED, shrapnel through the femoral artery. There was a surgeon, civilian contractor. Nobody knew her real name. She operated under mortar fire for 3 hours. Maya checked his vitals on the monitor, BP dropping. 85/58. Sergeant Brennan, I need you to stay still, she said. That was you, Brennan whispered. You saved Captain Ortega. He's got 3 kids now. You're the one they called Dr. Reeves. Patel's voice cut through the bay. She rushed over, glancing at the monitor. What's his status? Suspected splenic rupture with active internal bleeding, Maya said immediately. BP is dropping, abdomen is rigid, and he's showing signs of hypovolemic shock. He needs an OR now. Patel reviewed the chart. His last BP was 90/60. That's stable for crush injuries we monitor and resuscitate. He's bleeding internally, Maya insisted. Every minute we wait, he loses more blood. You're on observation only, Dr. Reeves, Patel said sharply. I'm the senior resident here, we follow protocol. Maya looked at the monitor. BP. 82/55. Brennan's hand suddenly gripped her wrist. Scalpel, he whispered. That's what they called you, scalpel. His vitals crashed. BP, 70/50, heart rate, 142. He's coding, the nurse shouted. Patel froze for 2 critical seconds. Maya didn't. Get me a crash cart, 4 units of O negative, and prep for an emergency splenectomy, Maya commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Dr. Reeves, you're not authorized, Patel began. Maya turned to her, and for the first time, Patel saw something cold and absolute in her eyes. If you want to explain to his family why you let him bleed out while following protocol, that's your choice. I'm not letting another soldier die on my table. She grabbed the scalpel from the trauma tray. Somebody page Dr. Holland and tell him I'm operating, Maya said. And someone get me an anesthesiologist who can work fast. The room moved. Maya's hands were already making the incision, and somewhere in the back of Cole Brennan's fading consciousness, he remembered exactly where he'd seen those hands before. In a blood-soaked tent in Kandahar, under rocket fire, saving a life everyone else had given up on Maya's hands, were inside Cole Brennan's abdomen when the emergency department doors opened. 3 black SUVs pulled into the ambulance bay at 7:31 a.m. No sirens, no emergency lights, just the quiet arrival of people who didn't need to announce themselves. The lead vehicle stopped directly in front of the trauma entrance. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, followed by a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen things most people only heard about in classified briefings. Inside Trauma Bay 6, Maya isolated the ruptured spleen with mechanical precision. Blood pooled in the surgical field. Suction cleared it in seconds. Clamp, she said. The instrument appeared in her palm. She secured the splenic artery in one motion. The bleeding slowed dramatically. Chen had arrived to assist 2 minutes into the procedure. He worked suction and retraction, watching Maya's hands move with a speed that defied conventional surgical training. Where did you learn this technique? Chen asked quietly. Not here, Maya said. Outside, the woman in the gray suit approached the trauma desk. The charge nurse looked up, already overwhelmed by the mass casualty event. Can I help you? The nurse asked, her voice tight with stress. The woman produced credentials. From inside her jacket, the badge read, Federal Bureau of Investigation, but the identification number had too many digits. The kind of detail most people missed. Deputy Director Nathaniel Cross, Central Intelligence Agency. The woman said, I need to speak with your chief of surgery immediately. We're looking for a specific trauma surgeon. The nurse's hand froze over her keyboard. This is a civilian hospital, we don't have... You do, Cross said, her voice calm but absolute. We were informed that Walter Reed Veterans Hospital employs a surgeon with Tier 1 federal medical clearance. We need that surgeon now. I'll page Dr. Holland, the nurse said, reaching for the phone. In Trauma Bay 6, Maya lifted the shattered spleen free. 28 minutes from first incision to organ removal. Vitals stabilizing, Chen reported. BP 95/62 and climbing. Maya began the closure, layer by layer, those same precise military sutures that marked every procedure she'd ever performed. Brennan's eyes fluttered open. His gaze found Maya through the anesthesia haze. Told you, he whispered. I knew it was you. Before Maya could respond, Dr. Holland burst through the trauma bay doors. His face was pale, jaw set. Dr. Reeves, step away from that patient, he ordered. Maya didn't stop suturing. I'm closing, sir. He's stable. I said step away. In 3 minutes. Holland moved beside the table, saw the surgical field, the clean extraction, the patient's stable vitals. His anger warred with professional recognition. There are federal agents in my hospital asking for someone by codename, Holland said, his voice low and dangerous. They're asking for a surgeon called Scalpel. You want to tell me what the hell is going on? Maya finished the final suture. She stepped back, stripped off her gloves. I resigned 3 years ago. she said quietly. Resigned from what? The trauma bay door opened again. Deputy Director Nathaniel Cross entered, flanked by 2 agents. Her eyes swept the room, cataloging exits, personnel, threats. Then they landed on Maya. Recognition flashed across Cross's face. Officer Kensington, Cross said. The room went silent. Chen's hands froze on the instrument tray. Holland stared at Maya like she'd become a stranger. Even the nurses stopped moving. It's Dr. Reeves now, Maya said, not looking at Cross. Not according to your federal clearance records. Cross replied. Dr. Maya Kensington, former medical officer, Special Activities Division, Central Intelligence Agency, 9 years of service, 52 countries, codename Scalpel. Holland's voice was barely a whisper. CIA? Cross turned to him. We have a critical patient en route. Gunshot wounds, 1 near the heart. He's a Ukrainian intelligence analyst carrying classified information about imminent cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure. He requires immediate surgical intervention, and the injuries demand someone with combat medical experience and active federal security clearance. This is a civilian hospital, Holland said, trying to regain control. We have trauma protocols, chains of command. With respect, Doctor, your protocols don't apply here, Cross interrupted. This is a matter of national security. The patient's name is Ivan Sokolov. He was shot 37 minutes ago. The bullet near his heart is fragmenting. Every minute we waste, fragments migrate closer to cardiac tissue. Maya finally turned to face Cross. I left that life behind. Your clearance didn't expire, Cross said. And right now, you're the only surgeon within a 2-hour radius who can perform this procedure. This isn't a request, Maya. A man is dying, and everything he knows dies with him. There are other surgeons with clearance, Maya began. Not within reach. Not in time. Brennan's voice cut through the tension. She saved my squad leader under mortar fire in Kandahar. If she says she can do this, she can. Cross looked at Maya. Sokolov has intelligence on a planned attack. If he dies, so do the people those attacks will kill. This is the scenario we trained you for. Maya's encrypted phone buzzed in her pocket, 3 times, the emergency pattern. She closed her eyes. If I do this, Maya said slowly, I want full disclosure to my colleagues. No more lies, and when this is over, I go back to being a resident. Agreed. Maya looked at Holland. His face was a mixture of shock, betrayal, and something that might have been respect. I lied about who I was, Maya said. But everything I did in that OR was real. I'm asking permission to save this man's life using every skill I have, no matter where I learned them. Holland stared at her for 10 seconds. Then he nodded once. Get trauma or prepped, Holland said. Dr. Chen, your second chair, Dr. Patel, anesthesiology support. And someone find me every piece of equipment we have for cardiac proximity surgery. Outside, sirens grew louder. The ambulance carrying Ivan Sokolov was 2 minutes out. And Maya Kensington, the woman who'd tried to disappear into a normal life, was about to become Scalpel one more time. Maya stood in the surgical prep room, hands under scalding water, staring at nothing. The door behind her was closed, but she could hear voices in the hallway. Holland coordinating the trauma team. Cross on her phone speaking in clipped tones to someone at Langley. Chen prepping instruments he'd never seen used in a civilian hospital. And underneath it all, the memory she'd spent 3 years trying to bury. Lviv, Ukraine, February 2021. The safe house had been compromised at 2:47 a.m. Gunfire erupted through the second-floor windows while Maya worked on a State Department diplomat who'd been poisoned during a meeting with Russian contacts. His name was Thomas Carey, 43 years old, father of 2, bleeding internally from something she couldn't identify. She'd operated for 6 hours with a tactical team returning fire outside the door. Carey had died at 8:52 a.m. Not from the poison, Maya learned later. From a coagulation inhibitor the Russians had mixed into his drink, something no field surgeon could have counteracted without specialized antidotes she didn't have access to. But she hadn't known that at the time. All she knew was that a man had died on her table, and 6 weeks later she'd submitted her resignation to the CIA. Dr. Kensington. Cross's voice pulled her back to the present. Maya turned off the water, dried her hands with deliberate care. It's Dr. Reeves, she said without turning around. Cross entered the prep room, closed the door behind her. She held a tablet, medical scans glowing on the screen. Ivan Sokolov, Cross said, handing her the device. 28 years old, Ukrainian cyber intelligence officer. He's been feeding us information on a planned ransomware attack targeting the US power grid. Someone tried to kill him 41 minutes ago. 2 shots, one in the shoulder, one near the heart. Maya scrolled through the CT scans. Her trained eye cataloged the damage immediately. Fractured clavicle, bullet fragments scattered around the right ventricle, one piece lodged between the 3rd and 4th ribs, another pressed against the pericardium. Migration risk, extreme. Survival probability without immediate intervention, 18%. The shooter used frangible ammunition, Maya said quietly, designed to fragment on impact. Yes, I'll be removing pieces smaller than rice grains from tissue around his heart. If even one fragment migrates into cardiac muscle during extraction, he arrests. I know. Maya looked up. Then you know this is a suicide mission disguised as surgery. Cross met her eyes. I know it's the kind of impossible case you've solved 47 times before. 43, Maya corrected. And 4 of those patients didn't make it. 4 out of 43 is a 90% success rate in conditions most surgeons never face. That's why you're here. Maya set down the tablet. I resigned because I couldn't save Thomas Carey. I spent 6 hours trying to stop bleeding I didn't understand, using techniques that weren't enough. He died because I failed. He died because he was poisoned with a Russian-designed coagulation inhibitor, Cross said. We recovered the analysis 3 months after you left. No surgeon on Earth could have saved him without the specific antidote, which didn't exist outside of Moscow at the time. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. What? She whispered. Carey was targeted with a weapon designed to be unsavable. You weren't incompetent, Maya. You were set up to fail. The Russians wanted him dead in a way that looked medical, not political. Maya's hands gripped the edge of the sink. 3 years. 3 years of guilt, of nightmares, of believing she'd lost her edge when it mattered most. And it had been a lie. Why didn't anyone tell me? Maya asked, her voice barely audible. Because the antidote's existence was classified above your clearance level at the time. By the time we could have told you, you'd already disappeared into civilian medicine. Maya closed her eyes. Cross stepped closer. You left because you thought you failed. But you didn't. And right now, there's a man in that ambulance whose only chance of survival is you accepting that truth. The door opened. Chen appeared, already in surgical scrubs. Dr. Reeves, the patient just arrived. We're moving him to trauma OR now. Maya looked at Cross one more time. After this, Maya said, no recruitment, no pressure to return. I get to choose what happens next. Agreed. Maya turned to Chen. I'll need microforceps, magnetic probes for fragment extraction, specialized retractors, and 8 units of O-negative blood standing by. Chen nodded. Already prepared. And Dr. Chen? Yes? Everything you're about to see in that operating room. The techniques, the approach, the speed. None of it gets discussed outside this hospital without federal clearance. Understood? Chen held her gaze. I grew up on military bases, Dr. Reeves. I know what classified looks like. Maya nodded once. Then she walked toward the operating theater, leaving behind the woman who'd spent 3 years hiding and becoming, once again, the surgeon who'd saved lives in 52 countries, under conditions most people couldn't imagine. In the hallway, Dr. Patel waited in full surgical gear. I'm sorry I doubted you in the trauma bay, Patel said quietly. Maya paused. You followed protocol. That's what good residents do. And what do great surgeons do? Maya looked at her. They save lives, no matter what the protocol says. She pushed through the OR doors. Ivan Sokolov lay on the table, unconscious, pale, his chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. The monitor showed vitals that were bad and getting worse. Maya positioned herself at the table, looked up at the observation gallery where Holland stood beside 6 residents and 3 federal agents. This surgery, Maya said, her voice carrying through the microphone, will use techniques not taught in civilian medical schools. Questions will be answered after the patient is stable. Until then, I need complete silence and absolute trust. She looked down at Sokolov. Let's bring you back, she whispered. and Scalpel went to work. The first incision changed everything. Maya didn't use the standard thoracotomy approach taught in every surgical textbook. Instead, she made a modified anterolateral entry that gave her simultaneous access to both the shoulder wound and the cardiac proximity area through a single surgical field. In the observation gallery, a fourth-year resident leaned toward his colleague. "That's not standard protocol. That's not civilian protocol," Holland corrected quietly. "That's tactical field medicine. Maximum access, minimum trauma." Below, Maya's hands moved into Sokolov's chest cavity with mechanical precision. "Doctor. Chen, I need the fluoroscopy tilted 15 degrees lateral," Maya said. "I'm mapping fragment locations before extraction." The imaging adjusted. The screen lit up with 17 visible metallic fragments scattered around Sokolov's right ventricle like deadly stars. Largest fragment is 0.7 centimeters, lodged between ribs 3 and 4. Maya narrated, her voice calm and clinical. "Smallest fragments are barely visible. Those are the ones that kill you." She worked in complete silence for the next 12 minutes. Each fragment she removed went into a separate, sterile container. Evidence. Every piece would be catalogued, analyzed, traced back to the weapon that fired it. But that wasn't Maya's concern. Her concern was the fragment she couldn't see yet. The one she knew was there because she'd seen this exact injury pattern before. Baghdad, 2017. A translator named Rashid, who'd been shot with frangible ammunition. She'd found the hidden fragment lodged against his pericardium, invisible on standard imaging because it was shadowed by bone density. She'd almost missed it. Almost. Rashid had lived, but it had been the closest call of her career. Fragment count. 14 removed, Maya announced, adjusting fluoroscopy for deeper tissue visualization. The angle shifted again, and there it was. A fragment the size of a grain of rice, tucked behind the ascending aorta, pressed directly against the outer layer of Sokolov's heart. "Found the ghost," Maya said quietly. Chen looked at the screen. "I don't see anything." "Look here." Maya indicated a shadow that was barely distinguishable from the surrounding tissue. "That's not a shadow. That's a fragment that migrated during transport. It's resting against the epicardium. Any jarring movement, any shift in position, and it punctures through into cardiac muscle." Patel's voice came through the intercom from her anesthesia station. "How do you extract something in that position without direct contact?" Very carefully, Maya extended her hand. "Magnetic microprobe. The smallest one we have." The instrument appeared in her palm. She guided it with millimeter-level precision, using the fluoroscopy for real-time positioning. The fragment was ferromagnetic. The probe would attract it, allow her to draw it away from cardiac tissue without touching it directly. The observation gallery held its breath. Maya's hand was absolutely steady. The probe touched the fragment. Held. She drew it back with glacial slowness, watching the screen, feeling the resistance through her fingertips like she was diffusing a bomb. 1 millimeter. 2. 5. 10. The fragment cleared the epicardium. "Secured," Maya said. She withdrew the probe, placed the fragment in the evidence container with the others. Most dangerous piece neutralized. Continuing with remaining extractions. Holland leaned forward in the gallery. "She just performed a procedure I've never seen attempted outside of cardiac specialty centers. And she did it in 4 minutes, Chen added from inside the OR. Maya continued working. Fragment 15. 16. Each one extracted with the same precise methodology, each one catalogued. But the surgery was far from over. "Blood pressure dropping," Patel called. 90/50. "He's bleeding somewhere we haven't identified." Maya's eyes scanned the surgical field with systematic intensity. "Suction. I need visualization on the subclavian region." The field cleared. There, a small arterial bleed hidden beneath fascia, obscured by swelling from the shoulder wound. Maya clamped it in 3 seconds, tied it off, moved on. "Pressure stabilizing," Patel reported. 100/60. "Good." Final fragment located in the deltoid muscle, away from major vessels. "This one's straightforward." She removed it in less than 30 seconds. "All 17 fragments accounted for," Maya announced. Beginning systematic tissue examination for collateral damage. She worked through the chest cavity layer by layer, checking for perforations, tears, hidden bleeds. Her hands moved with the confidence that only came from repetition. from having performed this exact type of surgery in conditions that would have broken most surgeons. Field hospitals without climate control, operating theaters under mortar fire, tents lit by flashlights while helicopter rotors thundered overhead. This sterile, well-lit OR with its advanced equipment and trained staff felt almost luxurious by comparison. No cardiac involvement, Maya said. No pericardial effusion. Lung tissue shows minor contusion but no perforation. Vascular structures intact. She stepped back slightly, surveying her work. Dr. Chen, prepare the chest tube. Dr. Patel, how's our cardiac rhythm? Normal sinus, rate 74, no irregularities. Excellent. Beginning closure. Maya began the layered closure. Pleura, intercostal muscles, fascia, subcutaneous tissue, skin. Those same interrupted military-style sutures that had marked every procedure she'd performed, in every country, under every impossible circumstance. The sutures that had become her signature, the ones that identified her as clearly as a fingerprint. In the gallery, a resident whispered to Holland, "How long has she been operating?" Holland checked his watch. 2 hours, 19 minutes. Her hands haven't shaken once. Combat surgeons learn to operate for hours under conditions we can't imagine. Holland said quietly, "This is what they're trained for." This is what she was trained for. Maya placed the final suture. "Surgery complete," she announced. Total time, 2 hours, 23 minutes. Patient is stable. All fragments removed. Prognosis, good. He should make a full recovery. She stepped back from the table, stripped off her gloves, and looked up at the observation gallery one final time. Her eyes found Holland's. He nodded once, a gesture of respect from one surgeon to another. Maya walked out of the OR without another word. Behind her, Ivan Sokolov's heart beat steady and strong. And in the hallway, Deputy Director Cross waited with a question Maya wasn't ready to answer. What happens next? Maya found herself in the surgical scrub room for the second time that day, hands underwater, staring at her reflection in the mirror. But this time she wasn't hiding. The door opened. Holland entered, still in his surgical cap, his expression unreadable. "That was extraordinary," he said quietly. Maya turned off the water. "It was necessary." "No." Holland stepped closer. "Necessary is saving a life. What you did in there was art disguised as medicine. I've been a surgeon for 32 years, and I've never seen anything like it." She dried her hands, saying nothing. "Maya." His use of her first name made her look up. "I need to understand. Not just what you are, but why you're here. Why is a surgeon with your capabilities working as a first-year resident, pretending to be someone she's not?" Before Maya could answer, the door opened again. Cross entered, carrying a black folder with red classification markings. "Dr. Holland, I need a moment with Officer Kensington," Cross said. "It's Dr. Reeves," Maya corrected. "And this is my hospital," Holland added. "Whatever you need to say to her, you can say in front of me." Cross looked between them, calculating. Then she set the folder on the counter. "Operation Amber Gate," Cross said. "Lviv, Ukraine, February 2021. That's why you left, isn't it?" Maya's hand stilled on the towel. "You don't need to do this," Maya said quietly. "Yes, I do. Because you've been carrying guilt for 3 years over a mission that was designed to fail." Holland frowned. "What are you talking about?" Cross opened the folder. Inside were classified documents, autopsy reports, chemical analysis sheets. "Thomas Carey," Cross said, "State Department diplomat, poisoned during a meeting with Russian intelligence contacts. Dr. Kensington operated on him for 6 hours while the safe house was under attack. He died at 8:52 a.m. Maya closed her eyes. "I couldn't stop the bleeding. I tried everything I knew, every technique, every approach. Nothing worked." "Because you were fighting a weapon you didn't know existed," Cross said. She pulled out a chemical analysis report. Carey was poisoned with compound VX-47, a Russian-designed coagulation inhibitor. It causes cascading internal hemorrhaging that mimics natural bleeding disorders. There's only one antidote, and in February 2021, it existed in exactly 3 locations: Moscow, a FSB laboratory in St. Petersburg, and a WHO facility in Geneva. Holland read the report over Cross's shoulder. No field surgeon could have saved him. No surgeon anywhere could have saved him without that specific antidote, Cross confirmed. The Russians wanted him dead in a way that looked medical, not political. They poisoned him with something designed to be unsavable. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Why didn't anyone tell me? The antidote's existence was classified above your clearance level. By the time we could have debriefed you, you'd already submitted your resignation and disappeared. So I spent 3 years thinking I'd failed, Maya said, anger creeping into her voice. 3 years believing I'd lost my edge when it mattered most. 3 years running from who I was because I thought I wasn't good enough. You were set up, Cross said. The mission, the poison, the circumstances. All of it was designed to eliminate Carrie in a way that couldn't be traced back to the Kremlin. You weren't incompetent, Maya. You were fighting an impossible scenario. Holland pulled out a chair, sat down. So you came here to prove something to yourself, to see if you could still be a surgeon without the ghosts. Maya nodded slowly. I needed to know if I could save lives in normal conditions. If the skills I learned in war zones could translate to peace. If I was a doctor or just a weapon. And what did you learn? Holland asked. That I can't separate them. The weapon and the doctor are the same person. And I'm not sure if that's something to accept or something to fight against. The door opened abruptly. Dr. Chen appeared, slightly out of breath. Dr. Reeves, the hospital board wants to see you. CEO Karen Landry is waiting in the conference room. Maya and Holland exchanged glances. Did they say what this is about? Holland asked. No, sir. But there are federal agents in the room, and the board members look excited. The executive conference room on the 8th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the medical campus. Karen Landry sat at the head of the table, flanked by 4 board members and 2 federal representatives Maya didn't recognize. Maya entered, still in surgical scrubs, with Holland and Cross behind her. Landry stood immediately. Dr. Reeves, or should I say, Dr. Kensington. Reeves is fine. Landry smiled. Please, sit. We have a proposal for you. Maya remained standing. I fulfilled my obligation to the federal government. My contract with this hospital stands as written. I'm a first-year resident, and I intend to complete my residency. We're not here to terminate your employment, Landry said. We're here to offer you a position as senior trauma attending, effective immediately, plus a discretionary budget of $1.9 million over 3 years to establish a tactical medicine training program. Maya blinked. What? One of the board members, a retired Army general named Patrick Morrison, spoke up. Dr. Kensington, what you did in that operating room today represents a skill set this hospital and this country desperately needs. Combat medical techniques that could save civilian lives. Training protocols that could prepare surgeons for mass casualty events, terrorist attacks, active shooter scenarios. We want you to build a program, Landry continued. Teach what you know. Train the next generation of trauma surgeons in techniques that work when everything else fails. Maya looked at Holland. He was smiling. You knew about this, Maya said. I recommended it, Holland replied. 2 hours ago, while you were saving Sokolov's life, I made a call to Karen. Told her we had a once-in-a-generation talent in our hospital, and if we didn't give you a reason to stay, you'd disappear again. Maya turned back to Landry. I don't want to be defined by what I did in the field. Then define it yourself, Landry said. Teach it. Control the narrative. Show the world that these skills aren't just for war. They're for saving lives, period. Maya was silent for a long moment. Then Chen spoke from the doorway. I'd be honored to learn from you, Dr. Reeves. So would I, Patel added, appearing beside him. Maya looked at them. Young surgeons, eager to learn, reminded of herself before Lviv, before the guilt, before the running. I have conditions, Maya said finally. Landry leaned forward. Name them. Dr. Chen becomes deputy director of the program. Open enrollment for military veterans transitioning to civilian medicine. And no classified operations without my explicit written consent. Landry extended her hand. Done. Maya shook it. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she could breathe. Maya didn't go home that night. She walked through the hospital corridors at 11:47 p.m., past empty nurses' stations and dimmed lights, until she found herself outside the intensive care unit. Even Sokolov lay in bed 7, vitals steady on the monitors beside him. Chest tube draining properly. Sedation lightened enough that his eyes tracked her movement when she entered. You're awake, Maya said quietly. Sokolov's voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "You're the surgeon." "I am. They told me you saved my life, that the surgery was impossible." Maya pulled a chair beside his bed. "Difficult, not impossible. There's a difference. In my experience, impossible is just difficult with higher stakes." He managed a weak smile. "Thank you. You're welcome." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city lights glittered against the darkness. "The information I was carrying," Sokolov said carefully. "The intelligence I risked everything for. Did it reach the right people? I'm a surgeon, not CIA. But I'm told it did." He closed his eyes. "Good. Then maybe this was worth it." Maya studied his face. He looked younger than 28, almost fragile in the hospital bed. "You gave up everything to do the right thing," Maya said. "That takes courage most people don't have. So did you, I think. They said you left the CIA 3 years ago. Disappeared. And now you're here, saving the life of someone who should have died. That's my job." "No." Sokolov opened his eyes again. "Your job is surgery. Saving impossible cases is who you are. There's a difference." Maya felt something shift in her chest. "Someone told me something similar once. That I was trying to separate what I do from who I am. And maybe that was the problem. Were they right? I'm starting to think so." Sokolov's hand moved slightly on the bed, reaching toward her. "You gave me a second chance at life. Maybe you deserve one too." Maya left the ICU at midnight and found Chen waiting in the hallway. "You should be sleeping," Maya said. "So should you." Chen fell into step beside her. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question. Why did you really come here? To this hospital, this residency program, pretending to be a first year?" Maya stopped walking. They stood in an empty corridor, fluorescent lights humming overhead. "Because I needed to know if I could be normal," Maya said. "If I could save lives without carrying a weapon. If I could perform surgery without calculating exit routes and threat assessments. If I could be a doctor instead of an operative. And I learned that I can't separate them. That the training, the instincts, the reflexes, they're part of me whether I'm in a war zone or an operating room. And for 3 years, I saw that as a failure." Chen nodded slowly. "I grew up on military bases. My father trained combat medics at Fort Bragg for 20 years. You know what he used to tell them? What? That the skills that keep you alive in war are the same skills that save lives in peace. The only difference is context. You're not a weapon, Dr. Reeves. You're a surgeon who refuses to accept that some things are impossible. That's not something to run from. That's something to build on." Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't seen in 3 years. Understanding. "If I do this," Maya said, "if I build this program and teach what I know, I need people I can trust. People who understand where these techniques come from and why they matter." "I'm in," Chen said immediately. "Whatever you need." The next morning, Maya stood at the podium in the hospital's main conference room. 18 surgical residents sat in chairs before her, along with Holland, Patel, and 3 attending physicians she'd never met. At the back of the room, Cross observed silently. "My name is Dr. Maya Kensington," Maya began. "Most of you know me as Dr. Reeves, a first-year resident who appeared 6 weeks ago with questionable credentials and unusual skills. Yesterday, you learned the truth. I'm a former CIA medical officer with 9 years of field experience in 52 countries." The room was silent. "I'm here today because this hospital has given me an opportunity to do something I thought was impossible. To take the techniques I learned in war zones and adapt them to save civilian lives. To teach a new generation of trauma surgeons that medicine isn't about perfect conditions. It's about making the impossible survivable." She clicked to the first slide. A diagram of the modified thoracotomy she'd performed on Sokolov. "This is tactical field medicine. It's fast, it's aggressive, and it works when conventional approaches fail. Over the next 3 years, we're going to build a training program that teaches these protocols to military veterans transitioning to civilian medicine, and to any surgeon who wants to learn how to save lives when everything else has failed." A hand went up. A resident named Jake Ellis, former Army medic. "Ma'am, does this mean we don't have to hide anymore? That we can use what we learned in the field without being judged?" Maya met his eyes. "Yes, that's exactly what it means." The room erupted in applause. Holland stepped to the podium beside her. "For those who don't know, I'm Dr. Richard Holland, Chief of Surgery. 3 days ago, I questioned Dr. Kensington's credentials. I doubted her methods. I tried to restrict her from operating because I didn't understand what I was seeing. He turned to Maya. I was wrong. And yesterday, she reminded me that great surgeons don't follow protocol blindly. They follow their training, their instincts, and their commitment to saving lives, no matter what that requires. I'm honored to support this program, and I'm proud to call her a colleague. He extended his hand. Maya shook it, and in that moment, in front of 18 residents and 4 attending physicians and 1 CIA deputy director, Maya Kensington stopped running from who she was. She became, instead, who she was meant to be. A teacher, a surgeon, and someone who refused to accept that some lives couldn't be saved. 6 weeks later, Maya walked through Walter Reed Veterans Hospital at 2:14 a.m., unable to sleep. The Tactical Medicine Integration Program had launched 3 weeks earlier, with an initial cohort of 12 surgical residents, 8 with military backgrounds, 4 civilians eager to learn. The first training module focused on rapid hemorrhage control in austere environments. They'd completed it in half the projected time. But tonight, Maya wasn't thinking about curriculum or training protocols. She was thinking about what came next. She found herself outside Trauma Bay 3, where a third-year resident named Sarah Ortiz was struggling with a motorcycle accident victim. Compound femur fracture, arterial bleeding, vitals dropping. Maya watched through the observation window. Ortiz applied pressure, called for instruments, worked with methodical determination. But her hands moved with hesitation, the kind of second-guessing that came from textbook training rather than field experience. The patient's blood pressure dropped to 75/45. Maya's instincts screamed at her to intervene, to push through those doors, take over, use the techniques she'd learned in places without names. But she didn't. She waited. Ortiz adjusted her approach, repositioned the clamp, found the bleeding vessel. The vitals stabilized. Maya released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You wanted to go in there. Chen's voice came from behind her. He stood in the corridor, holding 2 cups of coffee. Every instinct I have told me to take over, Maya admitted. But you didn't. You let her figure it out. Chen handed her a cup. That's growth. Or restraint. In your case, they're the same thing. He stood beside her, watching Ortiz complete the stabilization. You've been avoiding the Department of Defense proposal. Maya took a sip of coffee. I've been considering it. For 6 weeks. Karen's been asking. The board wants an answer. The DoD had offered $8 million over 3 years to develop a military-to-civilian medical transition curriculum. It would triple the program's reach, establish satellite training centers at 5 hospitals nationwide, create a pipeline for combat medics and field surgeons to transition into civilian trauma medicine. It would also mean accepting that her past wasn't something to hide from. It was something to build on. I keep thinking about Thomas Carey, Maya said quietly. The diplomat in Lviv. For 3 years I believed I failed him, that my skills weren't enough when it mattered most. But you didn't fail him. You were fighting an impossible scenario. I know that now, but the fear is still there. What if I build this program, train hundreds of surgeons, and it's not enough? What if someone dies because I taught them the wrong technique, made the wrong call, missed something critical? Chen turned to face her. Maya, you've saved 43 lives in combat conditions that would break most surgeons. You saved Sokolov with a procedure that had a 90% failure rate. You saved Sergeant Brennan when everyone else had given up. You didn't build those skills by playing it safe. No. I built them by accepting casualties I couldn't save. You built them by refusing to accept that some things are impossible. And that's what this program needs. Someone who's faced the worst and survived it. Someone who knows that perfect outcomes don't exist, but refuses to stop trying anyway. Maya looked through the window again. Ortiz was completing the repair now, her confidence building with each successful step. She's going to be good, Maya said, because you're teaching her to be. Because you're showing her that technique and instinct aren't opposites. They're partners. Maya finished her coffee, set the cup on a nearby counter. Tell Karen I'll accept the DoD funding, she said, on 3 conditions. Dr. Chen becomes co-director with full decision-making authority. We establish a veteran scholarship fund covering tuition and living expenses, and the program stays hospital-based, not military-controlled. Chen smiled. She'll agree to all 3. How do you know? Because losing you would cost her more than $8 million could ever replace. The next morning, Maya stood in Conference Room 4 with the hospital's executive board, 3 DoD representatives, and Deputy Director Cross, who'd arrived unannounced. Karen Landry reviewed the contract terms one final time. $8 million over 3 years, satellite programs at 5 hospitals, Veteran Scholarship Fund fully funded, and Dr. Kensington and Dr. Chen maintain complete operational control of curriculum and training protocols. The senior DoD representative, a colonel named Marcus Webb, nodded. The department recognizes that this program's value lies in its independence. We're funding it, not controlling it. And my CIA clearance? Maya asked, looking at Cross. Remains inactive unless you voluntarily reactivate it, Cross said. You're a civilian surgeon, Dr. Kensington. What you do with your skills is your choice. Maya picked up the pen, paused over the signature line. 3 years ago, she'd walked away from the CIA believing she was broken, believing that Thomas Carey's death proved she wasn't good enough. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a first-year resident hiding from her past. Now she was building something that could save thousands of lives, not by hiding who she was, but by embracing it. She signed. Applause filled the room. Landry stood, shook Maya's hand. Welcome to the next chapter, Dr. Kensington. That afternoon, Maya found Sergeant Cole Brennan in the physical therapy wing, working through mobility exercises. His splenectomy incision had healed with those characteristic military-style sutures. Doc, he greeted her. Heard you're going national with the program. Word travels fast. Small hospital, big news. He completed his exercise, sat on the therapy bench. Can I tell you something? Of course. Captain Ortega, the squad leader you saved in Kandahar. He's got 3 kids now. 2 boys and a girl. His daughter's studying pre-med at Georgetown. She wants to be a trauma surgeon because her dad told her about the woman who saved his life under mortar fire. Maya felt her throat tighten. I didn't know. You never do. That's the thing about what you do. You save lives and move on, never seeing the ripples. But they're there, Doc. Every life you've saved has created ripples you'll never see. Thank you for telling me. Brennan stood, extended his hand. Thank you for not giving up on me. Or yourself. Maya shook his hand, then pulled him into a brief embrace. Go make those ripples, Brennan said. And Maya Kensington, no longer hiding, no longer running, went to do exactly that. 6 months after signing the DoD contract, Maya stood in the Walter Reed Auditorium, watching 200 medical professionals file into seats for the inaugural Tactical Medicine Integration Symposium. The gathering represented 47 hospitals across 23 states. Trauma surgeons, emergency physicians, combat medics transitioning to civilian practice, nurses with military backgrounds. All of them here to learn techniques that most medical schools considered too aggressive, too unorthodox, too dangerous for civilian application. Chen appeared at her side, tablet in hand. Registration just closed. We're at 212 attendees, 12 more than capacity. Where are we putting them? Holland opened the overflow conference room with live video feed. He also arranged for recording and distribution to the satellite programs. Maya scanned the crowd. She recognized faces. Jake Ellis, the former Army medic who'd asked if he could stop hiding. Dr. Ortiz, the resident she'd watched struggle and succeed. Sergeant Brennan, recovered now, sitting in the 3rd row beside a young woman who had to be Captain Ortega's daughter from Georgetown. You ready for this? Chen asked. To stand in front of 200 people and teach them how to perform surgery under impossible conditions? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's very on brand for you. Karen Landry took the stage first. 6 months ago, this hospital made a decision that many questioned. We offered a senior attending position and program funding to a surgeon whose methods challenged everything we thought we knew about trauma medicine. Today, I'm proud to report that decision has already saved 73 lives. The room erupted in applause. Since Dr. Kensington launched the Tactical Medicine Integration Program, our survival rates for critical trauma cases have increased by 31%. Our complication rates have dropped by 40%. And 12 hospitals nationwide have adopted her protocols with similar results. Landry turned toward the wings. Please welcome the director of the TMI, Dr. Maya Kensington. Maya walked onto the stage. The applause continued, building until she raised her hand for quiet. Thank you, she said simply. I'm here today to teach you how to save lives when conventional medicine says it's impossible. But before we begin, I need to tell you something important. These techniques aren't magic. They're not shortcuts. They're methods I learned in 52 countries, under conditions most of you will never face, refined through trial and error, and more failures than I care to count. The room was silent now. 3 years ago, I walked away from field medicine because I thought I'd failed. A diplomat died on my table in Lviv, and I believed my skills weren't enough. I spent 3 years hiding, pretending to be someone I wasn't, convinced that I was broken. She paused. I was wrong. Not about the death. That was real. But about what it meant. I learned that failure isn't proof of incompetence. It's proof you tried something impossible. She clicked to the first slide, the modified thoracotomy from Sokolov's surgery. This is tactical field surgery. It's fast, aggressive, and it works when you're out of options. Over the next 3 days, we're going to teach you hemorrhage control, damage control surgery, improvised airway management, and field triage protocols. Some of you will find this material uncomfortable. Some will question whether these techniques belong in civilian hospitals. She met the eyes of the Georgetown student, but I'm going to ask you to set aside those concerns and focus on one question. If someone you love was dying and conventional approaches had failed, would you want their surgeon to have these skills? 200 heads nodded. Then let's begin. Over the next 3 days, Maya and Chen ran the attendees through intensive training modules. Day 1 focused on rapid hemorrhage control, using techniques Maya had developed in Afghanistan and Iraq. Participants worked on simulation models, learning to identify and control arterial bleeding in under 90 seconds. Dr. Ortiz paired with Jake Ellis, the former medic. Their hands moved in practice synchronization, his military training complementing her civilian precision. You're not second-guessing anymore, Ellis observed. I learned from someone who doesn't believe in second-guessing, Ortiz replied, glancing toward Maya across the room. Day 2 covered damage control surgery, the art of doing just enough to keep a patient alive for definitive care later. Maya demonstrated on a high-fidelity surgical simulator, walking through the decision-making process in real time. You have a patient with a liver laceration, splenic rupture, and possible bowel perforation, she narrated. You have 20 minutes before they bleed out. Conventional surgery would take 90 minutes minimum. What do you do? A hand went up. A trauma surgeon from Seattle named Dr. Rachel Park. Pack the liver, remove the spleen, and leave the bowel for later? Exactly. You're not trying to fix everything. You're trying to buy time. Perfection is the enemy of survival. Day 3 focused on mass casualty triage and resource allocation, the impossible decisions Maya had faced in field hospitals during terrorist attacks and natural disasters. You have 10 critical patients and 3 surgeons, Maya said. How do you decide who lives? The room fell silent. This is the question no one wants to answer, Maya continued. But in mass casualty events, you will face it. And the answer isn't based on morality or fairness. It's based on survivability. You treat the patients most likely to survive with the resources you have. It's brutal, it's imperfect, and it's the only way to save the maximum number of lives. A Navy physician stood. How do you live with those decisions? Maya met his eyes. By remembering that saving 6 out of 10 is better than saving none. By accepting that perfect outcomes don't exist. And by refusing to let the ones you couldn't save stop you from trying to save the next one. On the final evening, Maya found Ivan Sokolov in the audience. He'd been discharged from the hospital 4 months earlier, now living under a new identity and witness protection. But he'd requested permission to attend the symposium. You came, Maya said. I wanted to see what you built, what my second chance helped create. They stood at the back of the auditorium, watching Chen lead a closing workshop on combat medical mindset. Do you ever regret it? Sokolov asked. Leaving the CIA? Giving up that life? Maya considered the question. No. I regret the lies I told myself afterward, the 3 years I spent hiding. But leaving? That was necessary. Building something that helps instead of just reacting to crises. This is what I was meant to do. You gave me a second chance at life, Sokolov said. And I gave you permission to take yours back. I think that makes us even. Maya smiled. I think you're right. The symposium concluded with a standing ovation, and 47 hospitals committing to implement the TMIP protocols within 6 months. As the attendees filed out, a young woman approached Maya, Captain Ortega's daughter. "Dr. Kensington, I'm Maria Ortega. You saved my father's life in Kandahar. I remember. Your father's squad leader. He told me about you. About the surgeon who operated under mortar fire and never gave up. That's why I'm studying medicine. Because of you." Maya felt tears threaten. "Your father made it easy. He refused to quit. He said you told him breathing was optional, but living wasn't. Sounds like something I'd say." Maria extended her hand. "I start my surgical residency next year. I'm hoping to apply to your program." Maya shook her hand. "We'll be waiting for you." As Maria walked away, Chen appeared beside Maya. 12 hospitals just requested satellite program installations," he said. "Karen wants to schedule a planning meeting next week. Tell her yes. To all of it." Chen smiled. "You're not hiding anymore." "No," Maya said, watching the auditorium empty. "I'm building something that matters. And I'm not stopping until every surgeon who needs these skills has access to them." 9 months after the symposium, Maya stood in her office reviewing expansion proposals when her encrypted phone rang. The number showed a Langley prefix. She answered. "This is Dr. Kensington." "Maya, it's Cross. I need 5 minutes of your time. I'm not reactivating my clearance." "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to listen." Maya sat down. 5 minutes. "The DoD is proposing an expansion of your program. Full federal partnership, $50 million over 5 years, integration into every military medical facility and VA hospital nationwide. It would make tactical medicine standard protocol for all trauma surgeons serving military populations." Maya was silent. "They want you to lead it," Cross continued. "Director-level position, complete operational autonomy, salary commensurate with senior executive service. You'd be transforming military medicine for the next generation. What's the catch?" "No catch. They recognize what you've built works. They want to scale it. The question is whether you're willing to accept that your past isn't something to overcome. It's your greatest asset." Maya looked out her window at the medical campus below. In the training center across the courtyard, she could see residents running through hemorrhage control drills. Their movements were confident, precise, absent the hesitation she'd seen 9 months ago. "I'll need to discuss it with my team," Maya said. "Take the time you need. But Maya, what you're doing matters. More than you know." Cross hung up. That afternoon, Maya convened an emergency meeting with Chen, Holland, and Karen Landry. $50 million, Landry repeated, reading the proposal. "That's not an expansion. That's a transformation." "It would also mean federal oversight," Holland said. "Military chain of command, political pressure. Are you prepared for that?" Maya looked at Chen. "What do you think?" "I think you've spent 9 months proving that these techniques save lives. I think 18 hospitals have adopted your protocols and seen measurable improvements in survival rates. And I think Maria Ortega isn't the only person whose life was changed because you refused to stay hidden." "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is. You're asking whether you should accept federal funding to scale something that works. The answer is yes, with conditions that protect the program's integrity." Maya nodded slowly. "I want it in writing. The program remains hospital-based, curriculum development stays with civilian medical directors, and no active CIA or military personnel are placed in operational leadership without my approval." "They'll negotiate," Landry said. "Let them. Those are my terms." 2 weeks later, Maya sat across from Colonel Webb and 2 Department of Defense attorneys in a federal conference room in Arlington. "Your conditions are unconventional," Webb said. "So are my methods. That's why they work. The department is concerned about accountability. If we're investing $50 million, we need assurance of proper oversight. You'll have quarterly reports, independent audits, and measurable outcomes. What you won't have is operational control over curriculum or training methodology. I've built this program by refusing to compromise on standards. I'm not starting now." One of the attorneys leaned forward. "Dr. Kensington, with respect, no federal program operates with this level of independence. Then start a new precedent. Because the alternative is, I decline the funding and continue building the program privately. It'll take longer, reach fewer people, but it'll maintain the integrity that makes it effective." Webb studied her for a long moment. You're willing to walk away from $50 million? I've walked away from more important things than money, Colonel. I can do it again. Webb smiled. The DoD accepts your terms. All of them. The announcement went live 3 weeks later. National news coverage. Former CIA surgeon transforms military medicine. Articles in medical journals. Features in veteran advocacy publications. And letters. Hundreds of them. From surgeons who'd implemented the protocols and saved lives they would have lost before. From veterans who'd received care from TMIP-trained physicians. From medical students applying to residency programs specifically to access the training. Maya read them all. One letter stood out. From a trauma surgeon in Denver, named Dr. Sarah Mitchell. 3 months ago, we had a mass casualty event. Nightclub shooting, 14 critical patients, 2 available surgeons. Using your triage protocols and damage control techniques, we saved 11. Before your training, we estimate we would have saved 5, maybe 6. You gave us tools that turned impossible odds into survivable ones. Thank you for refusing to hide your skills. Maya pinned the letter to her office wall. That evening, she visited Ivan Sokolov at a small cafe in Georgetown, where he worked under his new identity. He'd shaved his head, grown a beard, looked nothing like the man who'd arrived bleeding in the ambulance 9 months earlier. You saw the news, Maya said, sitting across from him. Hard to miss. You're famous now. I'm useful now. There's a difference. Sokolov poured her coffee from a pot he'd brought to the table. The intelligence I carried, the cyber attack plans, the FBI stopped them last month. 3 major infrastructure targets. Power grid, water systems, hospital networks. Hundreds of thousands of people would have been affected. You saved those lives. We saved them. You kept me alive long enough to matter. They sat in comfortable silence. Do you ever regret it? Maya asked, giving up everything to do the right thing. Every day. And never. Sokolov smiled. Regret is just proof you had something worth losing. The question is whether you build something better afterward. And have you? He gestured around the cafe. I make coffee now. Learn English idioms. Read American novels. It's smaller than my old life, but it's mine. And nobody's trying to kill me for it. That's a significant improvement. So is what you've built. You took skills designed for war and made them save lives in peace. That's the best kind of transformation. Maya left the cafe at midnight and found Cross waiting outside, leaning against a black sedan. You're persistent, Maya said. I'm thorough. There's a difference. Cross straightened. I wanted to tell you something before it becomes public record. What? Thomas Carey's family, his widow and 2 daughters. They know the truth now. About the poison, about what really happened in Lviv. They wanted me to tell you something. Maya felt her chest tighten. They said thank you. For trying. For not giving up. For carrying guilt that wasn't yours to carry. And they said they hope you've found peace with it. Tears stung Maya's eyes. They also established a scholarship in his name. Cross continued. For medical students pursuing trauma surgery. The first recipient starts at Georgetown next fall. Maria Ortega. How did you know? Because some stories come full circle. Cross nodded. You're not defined by the lives you couldn't save, Maya. You're defined by what you did with the ones you could. Remember that. She got in the sedan and drove away. Maya stood alone on the Georgetown street, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city, and felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace. Not because the guilt was gone. It would never fully disappear. But because she'd finally accepted that failure wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of the next chapter. 18 months after the federal partnership announcement, Maya was teaching an advanced hemorrhage control module when the trauma alert sounded. Mass casualty incident, multi-vehicle accident on Interstate 95, 11 critical casualties inbound, ETA 6 minutes. Maya looked at her class of 22 residents. Half had military backgrounds. Half were civilians trained in TMIP protocols. This is what we've been preparing for, she said calmly. Dr. Ellis, coordinate triage. Doctor. Ortiz, take trauma bays 1 through 4. Dr. Chen and I will handle the critical cases. Move. The room emptied in 30 seconds. Maya reached the trauma department as the first ambulances arrived. The scene was controlled chaos. But it was organized chaos. every person moving with purpose. The fifth patient wheeled in changed everything. A young woman, 19 years old, named Jessica Warren. Critical injuries, tension pneumothorax, visible chest trauma, oxygen saturation dropping. Dr. Ortiz and a second-year resident named David Park were already working on her. Diminished breath sounds on the right side, Ortiz reported. Trachea's deviated. She needs immediate needle decompression. Park hesitated. Are you sure? Her vitals are about to crash if we don't decompress now. Ortiz positioned the needle with steady hands. Dr. Kensington taught me this technique. 14-gauge catheter, second intercostal space, midclavicular line. She inserted the needle. The hiss of escaping air was immediate. Jessica's oxygen saturation began climbing. Color returned to her face. Stabilizing, Park said, watching the monitors. That was incredible. Maya observed from the doorway, saying nothing. Chen appeared beside her. You're not intervening. They don't need me to. Ortiz just performed a field technique most civilian surgeons wouldn't attempt. She did it in under 90 seconds without hesitation, exactly as trained. That's because you taught her it was possible. In Trauma Bay 2, Jake Ellis was managing a patient with arterial bleeding, using a tourniquet application technique he'd learned in the Army and refined through TMIP training. His movements were confident, precise, effective. In Bay 3, Dr. Park, the resident who'd hesitated moments earlier, was now assisting with a damage control surgery, following protocols Maya had developed in Baghdad and adapted for civilian hospitals. Every bay showed the same pattern. Surgeons using techniques that didn't exist in civilian medicine 2 years ago, saving lives that would have been lost before. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Karen Landry. Turn on the news. She pulled out her tablet, opened a news app. The headline read, Tactical Medicine Program credited with record trauma survival rates nationwide. The article detailed a CDC study showing hospitals using TMIP protocols had seen a 44% reduction in trauma mortality over 18 months. The program was now implemented in 127 hospitals across 38 states. You did this, Chen said, reading over her shoulder. We did this. You, Holland, everyone who believed these techniques could work. 4 hours later, all 11 casualties were stabilized. 9 would make full recoveries. 2 required additional surgery, but were expected to survive. Pre-TMIP protocols, the estimated survival rate would have been 5, maybe 6. Maya gathered the trauma team in the conference room for debrief. 11 patients, 11 saves, she began. That's not luck. That's training, preparation, and execution under pressure. Dr. Ortiz, walk me through your needle decompression. Ortiz stood. Patient presented with classic tension pneumothorax symptoms. I recognized the pattern, confirmed with physical exam, and deployed the field technique we've drilled 50 times in simulation. Total time from identification to decompression, 73 seconds. And why didn't you wait for imaging? Because waiting would have killed her. You taught us that perfect information is the enemy of timely action. Maya nodded. Dr. Ellis, your tourniquet application on patient 7? Military technique, adapted for civilian use. Controlled bleeding in 45 seconds, maintained perfusion to the limb, successful save. One by one, the residents walked through their cases. Each one demonstrated mastery of techniques that had been considered too aggressive, too risky, too unconventional for civilian medicine, until Maya proved they worked. That evening, Maya found herself in the hospital's memorial garden. The space was quiet, peaceful, lit by soft pathway lights. A man in his 60s sat on a bench near the fountain. He looked up as Maya approached. Dr. Kensington? Maya paused. Yes? I'm Robert Warren, Jessica's father. He stood, extending his hand. The young woman Dr. Ortiz saved this morning. Maya shook his hand. How is she? Recovering. The doctor said she'll make a full recovery thanks to quick intervention. His voice caught. They said the technique Dr. Ortiz used, the needle decompression, it's not standard civilian practice, that most doctors wouldn't have done it. Dr. Ortiz is exceptionally well trained. She said she learned it from you. That you developed the protocol based on combat medicine techniques. Maya nodded. That's correct. Warren's eyes filled with tears. I'm a retired Marine. I was in Fallujah in 2004. I took shrapnel to the chest. Tension pneumothorax, just like my daughter. A combat medic saved my life using the same technique. Needle decompression in the field, under fire. No hesitation. Maya felt her breath catch. That medic told me something I never forgot, Warren continued. He said breathing was optional, but living wasn't. And then he made sure I did both. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. That was you, wasn't it? Warren asked. 20 years ago, in Fallujah. You were the one who saved me. Maya's mind raced back. Fallujah, 2004. She'd been 23 years old, newly deployed. Part of a medical unit attached to Marine operations. A sergeant with chest trauma, pneumothorax, no time for conventional treatment. She'd performed the needle decompression in 40 seconds, under mortar fire, using a technique she'd learned 3 weeks earlier. Robert Warren, Maya whispered. 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. You remember. I remember all of them. Warren pulled her into an embrace. You saved my life so I could be here to see my daughter's life saved using the same technique. That's not coincidence, Dr. Kensington. That's legacy. Later that night, Maya stood in her office looking at the wall covered with letters, photos, and news clippings. Stories of lives saved using TMIP protocols. Surgeons who'd found confidence in techniques they'd been afraid to use. Veterans who'd finally found a place where their military medical experience was valued, not hidden. Chen knocked on the open door. Maria Ortega just called. She's been accepted into our residency program. Starts next month. Maya smiled. Full circle. More like an expanding spiral. Every person you train saves lives. Every life they save creates ripples. And those ripples keep spreading. That's the point, isn't it? Not to be the only one who can do impossible things, but to teach others that impossible is just a starting point. Her phone buzzed one final time. A message from Cross. Heard about the saves today. 11 for 11. That's the Maya Kensington I remember. The one who refuses to accept that some things can't be done. Keep changing the world. Maya set the phone down and looked out at the medical campus below. Training center lights still burned bright. Residents were running night drills, practicing techniques that would save lives tomorrow, next week, next year. She'd spent 3 years running from who she was. She'd spent the last 2 years becoming who she was meant to be. Not a weapon, not just a surgeon, but a teacher, a leader, and someone who understood that the greatest skill wasn't performing impossible surgeries. It was teaching others to believe impossible was just another word for not yet. In the trauma bay below, Dr. Ortiz was teaching a new resident the same needle decompression technique she'd used to save Jessica Warren. The circle continued. The ripples spread, and Maya Kensington finally understood that her story wasn't about the lives she couldn't save in Lviv. It was about all the lives she'd saved since, and all the ones her students would save tomorrow. That was legacy. That was enough.